here's an interesting book.
Sweet
Two books.
Mhm.
It, to me, these two books are the closest that we can come to getting a glimpse of the future as far as
Mhm.
people living close to the earth and the creator and being embodying that oneness.
Yeah.
The book is called Mutant Message from Down Under.
Whoa, that's a lot of words.
Uh,
Mutant Message from Down Under.
Mutant Message from Down Under. And what it is, this journalist was in Australia. I think she's she lived in Australia her whole life.
Mhm.
Um, and for whatever reason, she got this hankering to start doing research into Aborigines down there,
Mhm.
and like the real traditions, the real religion. But she wasn't having any real success because everybody had been beaten to death for generations, and you have to conform and comply if you want to survive.
Right.
Okay, well, the short end of it is she was checking into a hotel or checking out of a hotel. Anyway, this guy in a Jeep comes up and he like waves to her, and she, oh, that must be my ride. So she gets in the ride, and I think she's going to an airport, but the guy doesn't go to the airport. He just is smiling, shirt flapping in the wind. He's driving out into the desert, and
Mhm.
she's like, "What's going on?" And he's like, I'm taking you to where you need to go." And so she goes and meets like 20 or 30 of these natives, and is given the opportunity to do a walkabout with them.
Mhm.
And she has to take all her clothes off and her jewelry and her phone and purse and everything, and it
Mhm.
all burns. And she's given a little bit of a cloth to wrap herself up in.
Right.
But these natives, we're talking about mastery of the elements, uh, telepathy, being able to heal and be able to have control of their body, and being able to um, be so connected with animals that when there's a need, the animals just like give themselves over, to be a blessing to their bodies, with food.
Right.
And even okay, so the last book I read, so she wrote two books. The, they're both written as fiction because the publisher wouldn't publish it as fact
Right. Right.
naturally. So she's not in the second book, but I'm guessing it's a story that she gathered when she was with the tribe.
Mhm.
That this guy, his gift was the gift of sight, so he could see beyond the horizon. Basically, he could see energy,
Right.
and he could tell where the water was, under the ground and stuff. And he heard this voice for a while
Mhm.
to and so he told the tribe he needed to go find out where this voice was coming from, and what its purpose was. It turned out to be a crystal in like an ocean cave or river cave, something like that.
Yeah.
And the the bargain the crystal wanted to make with the guy was, if you take me up and let me see the sun, I will help you. Um, I will increase your natural talents. And so the
Mhm.
guy did. He got the crystal, found exactly where it was, and let it out in the sun until it was ready. And then, I mean, I'm not exactly sure how it went down, but he embedded it into his chest under his skin, and he said that it helped his natural talents just expand like dramatically.
Right. Wow.
Talk about mastering the elements.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of reminds me of the book The Alchemist.
I have not read
Like,
that.
oh, really? Oh, that's one of my favorite books of all time. Um, Mostly because I read it at an impressionable state in my life,
Mm-hmm.
but it's basically a book about a young shepherd in the Middle East, and he just kind of gets tired of being a shepherd and wants to adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And he ends up finding the two sacred stones, Urim and Thummim, and it's in the beginning it helps him to find a couple of decisions, a couple of routes to go, and then he ends up losing it, so he has to go on his own, just free will, without any help,
Mm-hmm.
and it is all to lead him to treasure at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
But in this process, he's meeting different people. He's learning the different elements of life. How to turn lead into gold. Like literally, he's learning alchemy
Yeah.
during the process, and he's commanding sandstorms. Like he's doing all kinds of stuff. And the end of the book was just incredible because it was just like we go through a major journey, life-changing journey. He's had kids, he had a wife and everything. He had to leave his kids and wife just to continue on this journey. And the whole time, the place where he started his journey was the place that he ended it.
Mm.
That was one of the biggest things that helped me in my life, because it was just like, okay, there's a lot in life that I'm going to be taken through, but I need to remember where I started from
Mm-hmm.
in order just to fully understand my journey, appreciate my journey, and to just make a full circle back right around, like a complete vortex. you know.
Yeah.
So it's a good book to read. It's a lot more on alchemy inside of it, so I would recommend it to you. I haven't read it in a long time, so I just can't remember it all right off the top of my
Yeah.
head. But it is definitely definitely a good read. Definitely a
Oh,
good
that's
read.
cool. I wrote it down and put that on my list. I have such a long list of books on Amazon. It's
Oh yeah,
crazy how many books I want to get.
trust me. I remember. I was going to read a little bit of Outwitting the Devil to you if you're interested. You know.
Sure.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
That's cool.
All right. Well, let me see what pages I need to go to. All right. So one of them is basically the devil going through self-discipline.
Oh,
And he's talking about spiritual orgies.
okay.
So
Interesting.
it is very interesting. And he dives right into it. Like he wastes no time. So basically it's on page 242 of Outwitting the Devil. And uh, the question is, go ahead and describe exactly what you mean by the term spiritual orgies. And the answer from the devil is, a spiritual orgy is any form of religious ceremony which excites the mind and steps it up to an intoxicated rate of vibration. All
Mm,
forms of rivals, such as those which were conducted by Billy Sunday, Gypsy Smith, Dwight L. Moody, and others of their type, are spiritual orgies. The leaders of spiritual orgies use hypnotic suggestion to dull the sense of reason of his followers. The
mm.
victims sometimes indulge in these orgies so energetically they never regain full control of their reason and willpower. The insane asylums are filled with men and women and children who lost their mental equilibrium through indulgence in some form of spiritual orgy.
Wow. That's pretty accurate.
Yeah. Yeah. And it even goes a little bit deeper into it. And it's talking about how basically when people go into these churches, and they're surrounded with this complete energetic movement,
Yeah.
you get so high off of that movement. And people are calling it God, people are calling it the Holy Ghost, but it's a form of energy that is moving into place,
Mm-hmm.
and it literally knocks you away from reality.
Yeah.
You're not able to think for yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
that is the major reason why spiritual orgy is one of his forms that he uses to keep people away from the correct path. So
I mean,
it,
I can relate to that. I can remember, and I never went to like a really charismatic church ever. It was always very conservative and sort of like on the down low. But I mean, I remember, like the group singing and like the energy of everybody together being like swept away, like, songs would, bring me to tears or whatever. And it was like uncontrollable, like just totally enraptured. Enraptured is a good word. Hypnotized.
take it away.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it. I can definitely relate to it as well because I'm black, so every church that I've been to is always charismatic. You feel me? And
Right.
it's like clapping of the hands, stomping on the feet, everybody singing the same song. It was so rhythmic, and
Mm-hmm.
you start getting these dances everywhere, and it's like, hold on, wait. God want us to dance like that? So it was always just so weird to me because it was just like it was the same routine every single Sunday,
Uh-huh.
and it's just like, okay, I'm pretty sure something is supposed to change. It shouldn't be the exact same. The only thing that was different was the sermon, and that
Yeah.
was almost the exact same. you
It's
know?
about getting that contact high, that religious, that spiritual high, that it's
Yeah.
like getting a dose. It's like what is that? Oxytocin or something like that in your brain, It's like
Mhm.
that's the carrot everyone's chasing, is to feel the spirit, but they're chasing that
Mhm.
adrenaline, that rush.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, it is a literal rush that you're going through in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy too because I was watching Joe Rogan, and he was literally speaking about what was that cult that was over in California? Oh my God, I can't remember. It was a certain cult over there, and the guy was one of the biggest leaders. I think it was in the '60s or something like that, and people were flocking to his congregation, and it ended up coming out that it was a very scandalous cult, that he was using people for sexual orgies and all kinds of other stuff. But the
Jeez.
craziest part was when he was going through his ritual ceremonies, everybody still had that high, that spiritual high. A lot of people equated it to being in church, and
Mm-hmm.
catching Jim Jones. Yeah, appreciate you, Malachi.
Oh,
Yeah, and it was
Jones,
just
man.
like, yeah, and it's like, yo, okay, so if they have the same experience in the spiritual system that y'all would call demonic as the people that are in the church, it just confused me to be like, okay, maybe I'm doing something wrong. I need to see something differently. It's not all about that catching the Holy Spirit,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a lot different
It's
now. Go.
psychological manipulation. And do you know who Darren Brown is? He's like mentalist, magician. He's had several different shows on TV, but one of the things that blew my mind away was he's an atheist. He took another atheist to a Catholic church, and they were alone, and they except for the cameras. And through the course of implanting certain ideas and reinforcing them with triggers like tapping or snapping or whatever, he was able to guide her mind to the point of having a conversion experience with tears and repentance and everything within 10 minutes.
Oh,
He had to
good.
he had to undo it later because, ethically,
Yeah.
converted, and, but because he knows how the mind works, and he knows this is his whole life, is studying the mind and how to implant ideas and how to turn the knobs of someone's brain. He was able to give an atheist a conversion experience, and it was. I mean, at the time I was a Christian, and I was like have mixed feelings about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was remarkable to witness how the mind, and it was usually that happens in a group setting. He was able to do it alone with her.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
Oh, gosh, that's like you said. It'll definitely give you a whole bunch of questions after that. Because
Mm-hmm.
like if that state of mind can be achieved just like that in any setting, in any form, by anybody, it you really have to question what all is going through your mind.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't a pretty place if you can figure out that you can be manipulated in that form by
Yeah.
anybody, and that,
And
that's go ahead.
well, and how what's in our mind affects our spirit, like
Yeah,
easily
directly.
manipulated. We need to really protect ourselves, like really protect ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. And it it's interesting because reading this book, the devil. It always sounds weird when it comes from my mouth, but the devil is always talking about, if you want to get your ass away from me, think for yourself first. you know, don't come from anybody else's perspective without you coming to the common knowledge that is something that you can believe in yourself.
Mm.
And that is a big reason why we are all going to the OWASP right now, because it's like, okay, I'm reading something different over here, but this over here makes a lot more sense when I think about it on my own,
Mm-hmm.
without anybody influencing my thought process.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, I can't think of anybody I know. I mean, it's not even possible to be swept away in a group and, in the context of a WASP because there aren't any groups.
yeah,
It's an individual thing. At least at this point, it's literally like we can find each other now, but in the beginning, you don't know that there are other faithists out there.
yeah, yeah. You're not lying. Yep. And that's why I appreciate you for doing these lives, man.
Get the word
So
out. Let people know they got a support system. Like when we do our Sabbath prayers, and we've done it since we were Faithists. We always
mm,
pray for the Faithists out there
mm,
that are still alone, to let
right,
them know, that we're praying for them, and that they're, can hopefully feel some kind. Because for the longest time, we didn't know anything about Faithists, but it just felt like there were. If we just poked in the right corner, we'd find them.
right.
And yeah, just got to get the word out, and hopefully, I mean, two hopes that there will be faithists out there that realize that they're not alone,
Yeah,
and yeah, have people witness some of these conversations where maybe gets them thinking that whatever system they're in,
yeah.
the the inconsistencies can be resolved very quickly.
hmm Yeah, yeah, and the inconsistencies, they're a big part of it, because once you start realizing those, it literally takes you down a different route. But that's only if you're the person that wants to go and learn for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Eh, if a person don't want to learn for themselves, you can see an inconsistency and brush it right off. But if you really are being honest with yourself, like Malachi be saying, keep it real with yourself.
Yeah.
you know, um, it it'll open your eyes to a brand new reality. And yeah, that reality literally can either break your worldview or make your worldview.
It'll
And
probably break it first.
yeah, yeah,
Come
it,
crashing down and then just get built up again.
you know, And honestly, that's another thing that I can say about Outwitting the Devil. He talks about failure and how he uses failure to one of his biggest advantages. But the one thing that humans don't know is that failure is actually one of our biggest advantages, because in every failure, there's a chance to exceed that failure.
Mhm.
Instead of instead of dwelling in the failure, you can actually have or be mindful enough to find where you can elevate or where you can learn or where you can, gain a little bit of wisdom from that failure
Mhm.
to help propel you into the future. But yeah, quick question.
Okay.
I told you I was going to be coming with the questions this time.
Yeah, that's fine. Just bring it on.
Yeah. So in the Owaspy, Satan is considered to be the self, right?
Mhm.
But do you think that Satan itself is an entity?
It's really that's interesting because you read in like
Yeah.
the book of the book of Ben. One of the
Mhm.
books that has lists out the 9 entities,
Yeah.
and um, it was kind of confusing to me. I mean, I've read it a couple times, and it's like I think what that is trying to say is this is 9 qualities, and they're having um kind of like a they're all having a conversation from the perspective of that quality, like if different facets of reality.
Mhm.
But here, okay, so to answer your question, do I believe there's an actual entity, Satan? Yes and no. No, I don't believe there is a Satan the way that we were taught as
Okay.
Christians who are, so Satan would be the one singular leader, the highest fallen angel who has control, command of all the demons or whatever.
Yeah.
But I do know that we're talking about group energy, right? You have
Right.
enough people who are share the same vibration. It creates the sum is greater than the parts. It
Right.
creates this harmonic feedback, and in
Mhm.
a way, it does create a bigger expression of that energy
Mhm.
than the individuals. So in that respect, yes, that becomes kind of like its own thing. It's like a hell knot. It's
Yeah.
it's a real thing made up of individuals, but it's a real. Um,
Mhm.
of course, all of the high raised gods that have gone astray, with their little kingdoms and minions and stuff like that, they would qualify for the position of Satan the way we were taught. It was,
Mhm.
with a few modifications, I suppose. But
Yeah.
what about you? How do you tackle something like that?
Okay. Just going through a Owaspy itself, I do recognize that it says the self is Satan. But at the same time, I also see in Owaspy Satan talking to Aluaman or Thothma or, all of these different entities
Mm-hmm.
that are in the heavens already. And it's not themselves giving them the suggestions. It's a different entity with its own intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
It sings in the Owaspy. And that's where I got a little bit confused
It's
myself.
tricky to
But
navigate that.
yeah, it really is. And when it comes to Satan, I can see, especially with reading Outwitting the Devil, because he explains himself as being one part of the atom, the electron. So in essence, he's a part of everything. So
Mm-hmm.
he is a part of you, which is the self,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So it it is for me, I believe, to just answer the question, I do believe Satan is an entity. Like I believe that good is an entity and evil is an entity. You
Mm.
know, like our creator had to start with a foundation somewhere. Like it's a
Mm-hmm.
process to everything, right?
Right.
So it if he has a process of good and evil, he has to create that example of both of those things, you
Mm-hmm.
know, for everybody to be capable of learning. And
Right.
this is just my thought process. I don't know how everybody feels, but it's just my thought process. But it would make sense to me if creator created a moral being to be strictly moral, just like he created a bee to be strictly in its hive,
Mm.
and an immoral being to be strictly immoral, just like the bee in the hive or the lion to chase the gazelle. You
Yeah.
know, it's something that he has in the universe to bring balance to everything. You know, and these beings can't go outside of themselves, just like an atom can't not do what an atom cannot do. You know, it, I see a thought. Go ahead.
Uh, so in the book you're referencing, does Satan have free will, or does he just have to be Satan?
I think he just has to be Satan because it's no point in the book that Satan goes, you know, I'm sick of being Satan. But you know, it's Satan being Satan all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like Satan has its own intelligence to be able to bring someone down a level of to the path, like down a path that is away from the creator, you know. And then like he describes God as being omnipotence in the Bible, his opponent in Outwitting the Devil. Oh yeah, and Jameer, the author is Napoleon Hill. Yes, that's the author. But he describes his opponent as we call God, you know, and which is kind of consistent with OWASP because we know God not to be the creator,
Mm-hmm.
but he recognizes that God is the being that is able to display patience, that's able to display a longer process to becoming a being of perfection.
Mm.
You know, and he describes the thing that created them both as being the what did he say? I circled it somewhere. It's the storehouse of all intelligence.
Mm. Yeah.
So in our words, that would be creator.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it makes sense to have, for me it makes sense to have a Satan that is commanded to be a Satan at all times and a God that's commanded to be a God at all times, you know,
Yeah.
because
Well,
it keeps go ahead.
it's in line with the principal concepts found in philosophy, because you can't appreciate the light without darkness. I mean, they go hand in
Yeah.
hand. You can't you can't learn without mistakes. Mistakes are part of the learning process.
Hmm. Yeah.
I I have wrestled with the concept of Satan.
Hmm.
I think I have so much work to do with my personal Satan that I haven't. I've put the question of the beingness of Satan to the back burner, because right now I've got so much in me that I'm working on.
Yeah.
But it is
Yeah.
an interesting it is interesting to think about and
Hmm.
to try and figure out.
Yeah.
Try and figure out what's the most appropriate labels to use for that being or force or whatever. You
Hmm.
know, the it is
Yeah.
it whatever label we are comfortable with doesn't change the reality that darkness is a constant is constantly being associated with light. You cannot have a light cast without a shadow.
Yep. Yep. And literally, wherever you find light, you will have darkness, and wherever you find darkness, you will mostly find light. You know, it's a balance,
Mm-hmm.
and it's necessary. Like it is literally necessary because, like, even when you look at the cosmos, scientists will often tell us, like, all matter is just 5% of the whole universe, and
Mm-hmm.
that just shows that light itself is purposely put there. You
Yeah.
know, 'cause if darkness consists of 95% of everything, then why wasn't it just 100? At one point, it was all darkness. You
Mm-hmm.
know, the light had to come from somewhere, some spark, some thought. I don't know. You know, I can't comprehend everything Creator does, but you know, I will definitely try to learn the most that I can. But
Okay.
um,
You know, when it says that um, the, the reason why we can only see what we can see is like, you gave the analogy of like when you put salt in water, the salt just disappears, right?
yeah,
It's there, we can't see it. And we're talking about science, and right? There's
right,
the theory of gravity can be observed, but there isn't enough mass to make it work
yeah, yeah. I
that
can't
we can
imagine.
see.
Uh,
Everything is in a solution of ETH, and we can only see what we can see. And um, yeah, it's like I lost my train of thought, but it's very exciting to think about.
yeah, it is, and like I like to watch Neil deGrasse Tyson, dude. I love that dude.
Yeah, he's
Oh man, but he was speaking on that, and he was saying exactly what you said. Like we can't even see gravity, therefore we can't even measure gravity. You
mm-hmm,
know, so it makes it very difficult to even explain away gravity. You know,
mm-hmm,
you would have to bring in a variable that is quite literally a mathematical variable, a number that's not there, you know, in order to explain away gravity. And that's why Maxwell was so important in his day, like to Einstein, because he didn't have the theory of gravity in his mind. He had the ethereal theory, you know?
mm-hmm.
It makes a lot more sense because it's not holding everything down. It's necessarily kind of holding everything together.
You
So,
want okay? Here's something interesting that does not get talked about. This is like
mhm,
information that was maybe common knowledge in the scientific community like maybe 50, 60 years ago.
mhm,
So the great constants that physicists claim are constant, gravity, speed of light, there's probably a couple more, I don't know, they're
mhm.
not constant. Like they used to measure the force of gravity different places and different elevations, and
Right.
like I don't know, every week or every day, anyway, they get all the data and compare it and sort of get the average and trying to get, get a running average. It was not the same. Sometimes gravity was greater, sometimes it was lesser, and we're talking about fractions of a percentage, but it's measurable. Same thing with the speed of light. Not
Wow.
all the same. um Sometimes it's slower. The light is slower than the speed of light and faster than the speed of light. But what they did was they couldn't let that information get out. Otherwise, it would destroy all of their theories and concepts.
Yeah.
So they just took the average gravitational force and now made that constant. So it doesn't matter what you measure, it'll always equal the constant that they pre program into all the instruments. Isn't that crazy?
Wow. Yeah. That is mind blowing. Like, the amount of audacity people have to just remove information from the public's eye whenever they see themselves as being wrong
But that makes
is crazy.
so much sense. Like, if
Yeah,
what we call gravity and what we call light and what we call these things is really based on current and a vortex and like momentum and like going through different nebula, I mean, it makes sense that things are going to shift and change
yeah,
and be dynamic and
yeah.
um but not but the way that they have it set up, it's all a constant. There's no variable, and it just is what it is. Um,
Right.
but when you have the waspy, with the waspy knowledge and knowing that these constants are not constant, they're variables, it just is another. It's not a proof for sure, but it's an evidence. It's an evidence of the true nature of reality that is being suppressed.
Right. Right. Yeah. Eh, It's literally like frequencies. Like you have waves for a reason because nothing is ever going to be constant and it can always change at any given point. And like you said, it rolls with the tide. So it's that current, that vortexian current itself forces everything into motion. So it can force light, sound, what they think is gravity in whatever direction that it wants to force it into. You
Mm-hmm.
know, that and then now you just complicated in my mind the traveling thing that we was talking about earlier. Like with time and all that. So it's just like, okay, now this is oh gosh. It's
Just
something I can't think
and
about right now.
what you said about everything being a wave. So I mean that kind of explains why, depending on when you're measuring it, the height of the wave or the low of the wave, how um, the force that is described as gravity and light. And I gotta look that up. There's more than two constants that science has. I think there's more than two. I can't remember what the other ones are, but those two I know are not constant.
Okay. That's a really interesting fact. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and look some of that up myself because just hearing things that you really just can't explain, it intrigues me. Like you said in our last live, curiosity killed the cat. I mean, not curiosity, but well, what was it? What was it? Goodness, can't you think about it?
Sat- Satisfaction killed the cat. Curiosity brought it back.
Satisfaction. Yeah, satisfaction killed the cat, and curiosity brought it back. Okay, but yeah, that's literally how my brain works. So I'm definitely gonna be doing some more research on that myself. Um, Let me see. Let's switch gears a little bit. So have you ever heard of the Dogon tribe in Africa?
Yeah, I've heard of them, but I don't know anything about them.
No. Okay. So basically, it's a tribe in Africa that is said to have been there for thousands and thousands of years. And in the 1950s, there was a Frenchman that went to go explore this tribe and actually try to find out a little bit more about this tribe because of how ancient they thought it was. He went down there and lived with them for a number of years. I give him respect for actually taking the time to live with those people, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So as he was learning, it took him about 20 years just to talk to the chief. So
Whoa.
yeah, he was living down there for a long time, and that's the respect that you have to gain in order to get information at that level. So they told him that they were seeded on this planet, and the people that seeded them on this planet were from the star system Sirius B.
Mm.
And Sirius A is a star system that's probably the brightest star system in the sky, so the brightest star that you see up there. But there's a little star system probably southwest of that star, and it's Sirius B.
Hmm.
So I wanted to figure out, how do you feel about, this new age generation with claiming that there are star people here? And where do you see our humanity's origins from Owaspy correlating with the Dogons?
Well, a waspy starts out um, with a sort of a mixing of angels and humans. Um, the okay, so the whole purpose of having the um, the way the creator has it set up is you have the physical world and then the plateaus and heavens above it as a way of sort of curating life. I mean, to me, it's the perfect balance between the idea of evolution and the idea of creation. It's both. It's like
Yeah,
it's a guiding, right? And
yeah.
so in a waspy, you can see that on the spiritual level. You can see that in the physical level,
Hmm.
and all of that done with the through sort of the direct chain of command from the creator.
Hmm.
The Louis are sort of engineering or inspiring marriages and generations to sort of heighten the abilities of people to be able to be sensitive. And then you see the false gods inspiring people to flatten their heads, and they have their own temples and their own version of it. But
Hmm.
there's a lot that is not said. So we
Hmm.
know that there are beings from other worlds trying to influence humanity, both that are within the chain of command of the creator and outside the chain of command of the creator. So
Right.
all of that to say, I'm very comfortable with the all of those kinds of myths and stories,
Uh-huh.
because I don't think there's a conflict there, and it makes sense considering even in the Bible. Even, I mean, it's in every single history. It's not just the Dogon tribe.
No.
It's in every history.
Hmm.
So I would have to I would have to ignore a huge volume of knowledge passed down in order to deny that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I definitely can agree. You know, especially with you talking about the Australians and the Aborigines earlier. They have a similar history. Um,
Hmm.
so what I was thinking, like the moment that I thought about the Dogons, because I've been knowing of the Dogons for a while now, but when I thought about the Owaspy perspective, it makes sense. Because the cohabitation between angels and humans here, it was kind of like the Bible, but at the same time, it was different. So in the Owaspy, you have infant souls, that died in infancy from
Hmm.
other galaxies and other planets coming here and receiving another chance to, regain a little bit of their mortality or regain a corporeal body so they can learn corporeal things,
Hmm.
right? So it definitely makes sense to me how the Dogons have a certain history of, a certain star people coming, or, the Indians in India having a certain history, or the Aborigines over here in America. Like you said, everybody around the world
Yeah.
literally has this history. And even in the Bible, one thing that I didn't like about the Bible though, they made it seem like all the fallen angels were just bad.
Yeah.
I didn't like that part because when I read the book of Enoch, yeah, they brought in swords, they brought in war, they brought in all this other stuff, but they also brought in agriculture and they brought in, architecture. And it was a lot of things that we still benefit from to this day that I
Hmm.
think our creator would have wanted us to benefit from. So that was just one thing that I didn't like about that process. But I definitely can say that the new age goes too far with this stuff, because now people are thinking that they are reincarnated souls from these different planets.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, yo, you you were born on Earth, dog. Just take that. Just
Yeah.
stop trying to be something outside of yourself. That is that is not a okay process for me, because it's you pushing away everything, all of your past and everything that makes you who you are, in order to be some being that you seen in a dream from a different planet. you
Mm-hmm.
know and it's just like, yo, that ain't how this work, dog. That is,
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah. I mean, you see the true reality, and then you see all these different like attachment ideas people have, and yeah, it's
Yeah.
not really a mystery where the ideas come from, but the I the the good, or the not the yeah the good news, or like the light on the horizon is, I think, even with their sort of misconstrued ideas, it
Mhm.
still shows um, a willingness to grow and to explore and to get out of the box,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
now, nowadays it seems, especially with TikTok, you could be a star seed from whatever, and have your spirit guide, channel this and that, whatever.
Yeah.
But that was not an easy thing to communicate with people, a
Mhm.
while ago.
Oh yeah.
So I give them props for trying to, for living their journey to their highest light. And as long as they don't lose their curiosity
Mhm.
and not get stuck, as long as they don't get stuck, I'm cool with them expressing that,
Right.
because as long as they don't get stuck, their learning is still going to. I mean, I followed people on TikTok, for 2 years now, and some people are stuck, and other people, they'll have a theory, or they'll have an expression of something, and they'll be like, you know what, I learned more, and now I moved on, and I know more.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, well, that's great,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah. It's a breath of fresh air to find people like that. Because it's like you're able to put away yourself for a little bit. Put away your pride.
But
So
I agree
go ahead.
with you that the misinformation, or I think it's I think it's like, what's that term called, counter, they're like it's not planned opposition, but it's like planned, it's misinformation on purpose, getting people in this kind of creative, curious mode, and
Mhm.
taking their momentum and like hijacking it,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely hear you on that. And Jamaica got a pretty interesting view. What do you think about that? Maybe they're saying their ancestors, or their ancestors' entities.
Yeah, I mean, that's totally possible, because the ancestors are trying to teach us, like, they're bound to us, and I'm not sure how many generations back. I mean, the six generations comes up many times in a waspy, but
Mm.
like, our ancestors are bound to us.
Mm.
That's why it says in a waspy that not having kids gives you a lighter journey, because you don't have that bondage, that commitment.
Right.
It could be ancestors. It could be the fetals and the vampires and the drugs attaching and sort of fusing their consciousness with you. Like, I mean, that's where discernment has got to come into play. Like,
Yeah.
you have to develop that, because there isn't like a simple math formula that you're gonna be able to put everything into an equation and spit it out. Like this attachment or this memory is such and such. Like it's like, you have to develop that intuition for it.
Okay, yeah, I can definitely say it is possible. I'm not going to deny anything, Um, I I just wouldn't say, it's them going back thousands of years into their own life.
Yeah, I don't know what the limit is.
Yeah, yeah, it's weird because I've had my own experiences, especially in ways where I've dreamed of, like a dream felt like reality, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and it's not who I am today, but it's somebody that I felt like was myself. But it was probably about maybe 100 years old.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like 500, 600, 700 years old type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But even in that dream, I did not feel attached to that person, even though I felt like I experienced whatever that person experienced.
Yeah, I mean, I've had dreams like that.
Yeah, and it's just weird because it's hard to interpret something like that. And once you get a little grasp of this information, some people like to take a hold of that and take off running with it. You know, it
Yeah.
it I would just rather not. I would just rather not put a limit on it because, like we said, it could be possible. Like possibilities are definitely probable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna put a limit on that, and I can agree with Jamil on that. Like I think it is a part of DNA. It might have been an ancestor of mine. I could definitely believe that, and
The DNA thing is interesting too because we we are part of that lineage of DNA going back hundreds of thousands of years.
yeah, yeah,
So there's the DNA element, and then the actual ancestors, being still trying to guide us and teach us which is which and what's the threshold of their bondage to us. I don't. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It is very interesting, and like, how do you feel about um dreams of the people that you have loved that have died? Because
Mm,
I've noticed in my life those dreams are a lot more vivid than dreams that I have of people that are alive. Those dreams that I have of like my grandparents or a uncle of mine, a aunt of mine. Because I've had a dream of my grandmother and her sister, and they were just sitting at a table talking to me. That was one of my favorite dreams of all time. But it was a lot more vivid than just going through my brain at night. It felt like it was an actual conversation. How do you feel about certain dreams like that?
Um, I haven't had a lot of dreams. I only have my dad, my stepdad, who died like I don't even know, 15 years ago, something like that,
Mhm.
and my grandma. I know I've dreamt about them. My grandma, that was an intense dream. That was intense.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
the ones the I have dreamt more than one dream about my dad, but I don't remember them. I didn't write them down.
Hmm.
I don't think. But my most memorable dreams are where it feels like I'm like a fly in the wall, but inside somebody. Like I'm the third perspective inside of
Yeah.
somebody else in the
Hmm.
dream. And most of the time, I don't know who these people are. I just had a dream this last week where I was with a group of friends. In the dream, we're all friends, but I didn't know who they were. And we were setting up to play some music, and I was showing them my didgeridoos and my flutes and different things like you guys can play. We were just, we were going to have a jam session.
Right.
And it was a lot of excitement and the person that I was sort of attached to, it felt like me, but I could still feel that third person perspective at the same time, because sometimes I was looking through their eyes, sometimes I was like looking out in. Yes. And I don't know what to make about those dreams.
Yeah, it's weird.
Some of those dreams really feels like shifting into like a different dimension. Like you're literally just melting into a dimension, and you just kind of like got stuck like a fly on a vehicle. You just got stuck and you're along for the ride, and then you get the wind changes direction and you just get flipped away and you wake up. I don't know.
It's really interesting because it's kind of, whenever those dreams happen, especially from like that third person yet first person point of view dreams, it's kind of like how Owaspi explains like the engrafting spirits during reincarnation, like in the process of people thinking that it's reincarnation, because it's like you're attached to that person, but yourself is yourself, but you don't know who this person is, but it feels like who you are, and it's just like, oh, I really don't know what to make of this. And honestly, I I can understand if that is how actual spirits go about their daily process, because it's something that we can't explain here in this world, first of all.
Yeah.
So it would make sense, because just like the Aborigines call it the dream world. Whenever they say the dream world, they're just talking about the spiritual. It's something that is manifested outside of our third dimensional reality that we have.
Yeah.
So it's weird. It is weird, because life, it seems prolonged, and it feels shortened in those states as well. So you can have a whole year in one night of dreaming. So
I've never had a dream like that, but time does not work the same in a dream. I know that much.
yeah.
It's crazy.
You're not lying. Oh man. Go ahead.
You just like have a tiny cat nap, and you had a huge story just blow through your mind, like, and you're only asleep for like a second.
Yeah. Check the clock. It was 15 minutes.
Yeah. How is that possible?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Oh man. Quick question, because this is going kind of along with one of my dreams. Have you felt that you've heard the Creator's voice in your dream?
Oh, oh man, I wrote this one down. I don't even know if I can tell this without getting emotional.
Oh goodness, I
Um,
understand.
So this was early on in our journey with Owaspi. I had a dream. My wife and I were in a teepee at night with a fire, and she was playing the drum, and I was playing some click sticks, and we're meditating, and there was like our minds were in sync, and at one point I stopped, and she kept playing the drums, and the light of the Creator came through the teepee, and my hands were up, the fire was going, and it was like so powerful. It was like a baptism of light, and it was so comforting and like reassuring that this was the right path.
Right.
And I wouldn't say there were any words, but the communication was so clear. It was so clear. It's so powerful. is amazing. I haven't thought about that in a while.
That is definitely incredible. Like the baptism of light, just oh goodness,
What
man.
about
And feeling
you?
oh I it's I feel like I have. I feel like I
Yeah.
have because I'm gonna say it wasn't like that experience at all, because that that right there is pure connectivity right there, bro. That is pure connection right there. Um but I do remember that I was on a fast, and it was in a period of time where I was, I tried to do my genealogy, and I just kept getting stuck and was just trying to figure out like who my ancestors where were they from, and all
Mm-hmm.
of this stuff. And that wasn't the whole point of me fasting, but that was just one of those questions that I was having, because I was in the middle of my genealogy and I was getting stuck by people being named different things, and it was just like, okay, I don't know where to go from here. So I remember one night I was just about to go to sleep, and that moment right in between you being awake and you being asleep, I just asked the Father. I was just like, you know what, Father, I would just like to know where my ancestors are from, and I I don't know what else I can tell you right now. That's just something that I would love to know. And I fell asleep, and next thing you know, like I'm flying through the sky. Like it was amazing. I love this
What?
dream. Like I was literally flying through the sky, and I ended up over Central and South America. And the whole time, the voice was talking to me, but I can't remember what the voice was talking to me about. But this is what I specifically heard, and it was I felt every bit of this voice, and even
Mm-hmm.
saw the people in certain areas. Like it was pointing out certain sections, like northern Brazil, near Guatemala, like it was in southern part of Mexico, and it was really interesting. But the voice was like, your ancestors are from South America.
Mm.
And I just woke the hell up, and I was like, whoa. Like, hold on, that voice right there, I can probably say I only heard that voice one other time in my life, and it was literally, I think, in that same exact week.
Mm.
And I was sleeping, and then out of nowhere, I'm awake, but I'm asleep. And while I'm in this state, it's a voice that's just talking to me and just
Mm.
trying to tell me to get up and go write this down.
Mm.
It was just talking to me. And I was just like, but I was so sleepy. I was like, you know what? I'll remember it when I wake up. And I went to sleep and forgot it all. And I've been pissed off ever since then, because I would have at least liked to know what that was about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where it came from, but I would know where it was about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it was
That's a bummer.
though. Yeah, it is. It really is. Like, as one of my biggest regrets of my life so far. It really is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. I mean, so I've struggled with, periods of feel like amazing connection, like
Mhm.
tangible connection, and then long periods where it's like not so much,
Right.
more of like in my head. But the example in a waspy is the voice will come when it needs to come,
Yeah.
and the in between is our job to keep keep that light, that keep that faith alive. Because
Yeah.
if we had, I mean, if we had our guardian angel holding our hands, literally like walking us through it all day long, that's not faith. That's not growth. If we, I in a wasp it talks about huge cycles of time where angels walk side by side, and and it was commonplace. And then the
Mhm.
shifted, and it's like now's the time for humans to
Right.
start seeking knowledge for themselves
Mm-hmm.
and to grow strength in a new area.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, what do you
so
want, Joe?
yeah, and so it was just time, a different season, and you know, hold the experiences that have happened with you and just continue on, because it's not all going to be the same experience.
Right. 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 Yeah. Especially all individual, like we were saying earlier. You know,
Yeah.